Okay, now this is Spring IoC demo. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this old project and paste Spring IoC demo. Now this new project name is Spring IoC demo. Now for this Spring IoC demo, I'll just right click on it. I'll go to properties and then Java build path. Java build path. I'm going to configure my Java build path. There is a shortcut as well. You can just right click on your project, go to build path and click on configure build path. This will directly get you to the screen. Then libraries panel. Can you see right now this project is using only JRE, Java Runtime Environment. No third-party jar files added yet. Now it's time to add third-party jar files. And this is how I'm going to add them. Can you see a option here, add external jar? Now where I have stored them, I stored them in my public folder, right? So I'll go to my public folder. There is a folder called framework. Framework contains Spring Core and Spring Core contains all these jar files. So I'll just make selection like this. I'll press OK, OK, and all jar files are added under heading reference libraries. If I expand this, you can still look at this path. Can you see this? Remember, files are still at public/framework/Spring Core folder. We are just creating their path, or we are just adding their path to Eclipse project. If I delete these files from my public folder, this program will show build path errors. Okay? So when you create a program, you have to do same thing. Right click, build path, configure build path, and make sure that you are providing reference to all those jar files. Huh? Yes. It's because, yes, है ना? For that you'll have to use another framework, Apache Maven. Yeah, Maven use करोगे तो एक ही बार बोलो Spring Core 4.0. Maven सारे jar file copy करने का काम करेगा. But we should not, start another framework now. And anyway, it's not written in our syllabus. Then here we need to create a special file called Spring Bean configuration file. Can you see there is an option here? Spring Bean configuration file. It is basically an XML file. I'm going to create this file under my src folder, and let me name this file as mahendra.xml. Right now, I just need only one XML namespace, beans, version 4.0. Can you see here the namespace name? Can you see this? XMLNS and then XSI XMLNS and then schema bean. This is XML namespace for Spring Beans namespace. Beans open tag, beans close. Now, I'm going to make a small change here in my program. This was my app main, right? Yes or no? Okay. Now, all these things, I'm going to define all this inside my XML file. Let's see how. Bean ID calc class com.mahendra.calculator. You know what this is? Through this line, I am informing Spring to create an object with variable name calc of type com.mahendra.calculator using its default constructor. Then bean ID sum UI class, sorry sum nahi, subtract UI class com dot Mahendra dot subtract UI. Bean ID, wait a second, not bean ID, here we need to provide property. Okay, this is how we perform setter injection. This is how we perform setter injection. What this will do, what it will do now. Yes.
Gives a reference.
Okay, let's see what it will do. Here object of calc will be made, here object of subtract UI will be made, and then using setter injection we are injecting this calculator into this subtract UI object. Which object? Subtract UI object. There is a small change, but or there is a small challenge here, and that challenge is about the scanner class. Can you see the scanner class here? Challenge is of scanner class. How can we make scanner class bean here? Can we write it here like bean ID is equal to SC and then class is equal to, now it's java dot util dot scanner, but there is a problem here. It requires a constructor argument. I don't think it's possible to provide system.in directly as a value. Don't think so. This would be a challenge actually. Yeah, we can try that, but I'm very doubtful about this because this value is normally recognized as a string. See, its data type is string. So if I run this, it will actually try something like this. It will put a quote around it, right? Which is not actually the way it should work. System.in. There should be some way to provide system.in parameter to it. Yes, there is a way to do that, but yeah, have to do something. We should have better created scanner explicitly in our classes instead of performing dependency injection on it. Anyway, let's just remove this line as of now. We'll try it later how to do this. Okay, right now we made a calculator object and we have injected this calculator object into the subtract UI object. Okay. Now inside main method, I'm just going to delete all this thing and I'm going to write something else. Application context is equal to new class path XML application context, and here name of file is mahendra.xml, and then of course we need import statement for all these classes and interfaces. Subtract UI is equal to context dot get bean subtract UI dot class, and then new scanner system dot in. We are performing this dependency, or we are providing this dependency manually here, okay, instead of providing it through Spring. Now let's call UI dot subtract method. Now this is how Spring will help me. Wait a second. Oh, one dependency is still there. Apache Commons logging. Wait a second. And from where I should get that? Guess it's stored in my public Maven repositories. Just a second. Okay, commons loggings. I have now added this commons logging dependency and I'm just going to add it here. Okay, now it's saying expression is also required. Wait a second, let me just finish this. Expression, where is expression? This one. Expression to public framework Spring Core. Paste. Enter two numbers, 12.2 to 2.4, and it gave me answer subtraction of these two numbers 10.2. Okay, now let's forget about all the other concepts. Let's concentrate on Spring. Number one, instead of writing Java code, we configured all our business classes through this XML file. And inside this XML file, we use this tag bean with ID and class. Okay. Now, what is benefit of this type of declaration? Instead of writing a program, we are declaring entire dependencies inside an XML file. Inside which file? XML file. Now, this is the place where you will have to define all your bean classes, or you will have to define all your business classes and define their dependencies, right? define their dependencies, define which class is dependency and which class is dependent, link them with each other, which is actually called as wiring, bean wiring, when we define them in XML file. And once it is done, inside your program, you will be using these lines of code. Now let's see what these lines of program actually doing. What XML application context actually does. Let me just add a Javadoc as well. Beans, context support. This is how we start using Spring framework. Now there is much complicated concepts are there behind this one single line of code. But yes, this is how we start using Spring. This is how we will initialize Spring IoC container. This is how we will initialize Spring XML Bean Factory. Now what all these things do actually? As soon as you write new class path XML application context, then in bracket Mahendra.xml, this simply means inside same project, somewhere in this project, there is an XML file whose name is Mahendra.xml. Is it there? Yes. What this class path XML application will do? It will first try to read this XML file. If file doesn't exist, it will throw exception. If file have no read permission, it will throw an exception. But in case if file is there and it's readable, then it will read that file, XML file. Then it will start IoC container of Spring. Inside that IoC container, it will read all your bean definition, create those objects, construct them, and maintain their copies inside this IoC container. To create object, it uses something called XML Bean Factory class. Which class?
Bean Factory.
XML Bean Factory class or Bean Factory class, you can say. Why XML is prepared or why XML is there? Because this Bean Factory is using XML file as its source. What file? XML file as its source. That's why we are calling it XML Bean Factory, or you can just call it Bean Factory, no issues. So this XML Bean Factory or Bean Factory is responsible to create all those beans, to create all those real objects, and they will be made available. Now, how do we access those components or those objects? To access them, context has a method context.getBean. Which method it has? Context.getBean method. Context.getBean. Sorry. Then inside bracket subui.class. Okay. So who's creating object now? Spring's IoC container will create object, not us. We will simply request an object and use it. Now there is one more hidden benefit. It's no longer hidden now, but yes. By default, all beans that you define in your XML file are by default singleton. They are by default singleton. Singleton means no matter how many times you request IoC container, it will always give you same object or single object of every class. क्या लिखा है?
आईडी यूजी तो नहीं होगी।
मतलब सर जब पहला लाइन
बताता हूँ।
बनेगा वो डिस्ट्रॉय होके फिर उसको वही दूसरा देगा ना, मतलब
नहीं, डिस्ट्रॉय भी नहीं होगा।
रेफरेंस
तो वही रेफरेंस उठा के उसको मिलेगा ऐसे।
यस।
अच्छा ओके। वैसे एप्लीकेशन कंटेक्स्ट क्या है? वो वाला जावा ये स्प्रिंग फ्रेमवर्क का है ना? व्हाट इज एप्लीकेशन?
नाउ हाँ बता रहा हूँ रुको।
दोनों सेम हो गए।
If you run it, both objects are exactly same. Can you see? 2887 देखो दोनों के रेफरेंस सेम है, है ना? अच्छा जरा ये मैसेजेस पढ़ लो ऊपर जो क्या लिखे हैं। पहले हो रहा है एब्स्ट्रैक्ट एप्लीकेशन कॉन्टेक्स्ट का प्रिपेयर रिफ्रेश, देन स्टार्टअप डेट, कंटेनर का स्टार्टअप डेट पढ़ रहे हो, रूट ऑफ कॉन्टेक्स्ट हायरार्की में पहुंच गया। उसके बाद XML बीन डेफिनेशन रीडर, लोड बीन डेफिनेशन हो गया। उसके बाद लोडिंग XML बीन डेफिनेशन फ्रॉम क्लास पाथ रिसोर्स mahindra.xml and then created instance of calculator. Can you see this? Yes?
सर इसे कंटेनर क्यों कहते हैं?
हाँ, कंटेनर क्यों कहते हैं? एक सेकेंड, स्प्रिंग फ्रेमवर्क ही है, ठीक है, और उस फ्रेमवर्क के अंदर एक IoC कंटेनर है। फ्रेमवर्क के अंदर कंटेनर है, समझा? तुम लोगों का प्रॉब्लम यह है कि तुम लोग एक ही चीज को दो नाम से बोलने की मतलब कॉल करने की कोशिश करते हो, बराबर? फ्रेमवर्क इज नेवर इक्वल टू कंटेनर and container is never equal to framework. Like for example, under Java EE, there are web containers, there are EJB containers. We can't say EJB container को as a framework and web container को as a framework. They are containers only. What are they? Containers. Similarly, Spring has its own container, IoC container, inversion of control container. And to access that container, we can use variable of type application context. Okay, one more thing, application context is just an interface. What is it? Just a interface. Application context is just interface. Application context interface is further inherited by abstract application context class. कौन सा class? Abstract application context class. And that abstract application context class is later inherited by file system XML application context, web application context, and class path XML application context. There are three classes inherited from it. Let me show you Javadoc, how to access Javadoc. All of you have got that zip file and you have extracted it as well. Yes? Let me show you. This is docs, Javadoc API, overview tree. Oh, wait a second, overview tree is not good for me. Index.html. Okay, this is Javadoc for Spring Framework. Okay, which class we are looking for? We are looking for org.springframework.context.
Spring framework context.
Yes. Context, got it. Can you see there is an interface called application context here? Sorry. And this interface is further inherited by these many interfaces. And you can see there is an interface called web application context here. Okay. Now implementing class. Classes implementing this interface. There is first class called abstract application context. And if we go to abstract application context class, see, this is how it's been defined. Let me just go back. क्या हुआ? क्लास पाथ देखना है? हाँ, एक काम करते हैं, हम लोग यहीं से डायरेक्ट जाते हैं कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, कॉन्टेक्स्ट सपोर्ट में देखते हैं क्लास पाथ चाहिए ना अपने को, हाँ ये है क्लास पाथ. अब जरा ये ट्री देखो कितना लंबा है. Can you see here abstract application context? Abstract application context is then inherited by abstract refreshable application context, then config, then XML, and then class path XML. So when I said it is inherited from, it was never like directly inherited from. It is indirectly through several levels. But yes, it is a base class, or you can say it's inherited from that class. Yes, class path XML application context. See, these are two people who made this class, Rod Johnson and Jürgen Holler. Class path XML application context. Okay, दूसरा दिखाऊं. दूसरा है file system XML application context. Now what is different between them? Class path XML application context uses relative address of XML file, relative location. ठीक है? If you use class path XML application context, then your XML file must be inside your project, somewhere in source folder of project. But if you use file system XML application context, your XML file can be outside your project, into any directory, into any drive, into any folder. So if you use file system application context, you can access your XML file even from outside project, a file which is stored outside your project. Okay? But when we use file system, you have to provide absolute path, C:/something something. Okay? That's the only difference between them. Okay? That's the only difference between them. Okay, now, what is benefit of this approach? In case of a very big, complex application, you can define all your dependencies, all your bean dependencies directly in one XML file, right? Inside one XML file, here. And then, using application context, we can access them. Now why we gave ID properties, right? It's because there are few overloaded getBean methods available in context. Let's see. There is a getBean method which takes class, but there is another getBean method which takes string. Can you see this? हाँ, तो ID जो है आप यहाँ लिख सकते हो. हाँ, quotes में. Okay, only problem is if you do it like this, you have to perform manually typecasting, because getBean method which takes ID need to be typecasted into appropriate class. ठीक है? Yes. Now there is one advantage of this approach and there is one disadvantage of this approach. What is advantage?
Name can be changed.
Advantage is name is unique. Name is unique, right? So if in case you have two bean tags for sub UI class, ठीक है? You can access each one by using their unique ID. Okay, unique name. But if you use first method sub UI.class, then you cannot have two beans with same class in your bean configuration file. Q? Because when you call this method, line number 16, if you write getBean then in brackets sub UI.class, and if there are two beans of same class, then you will get an exception. Required one, found two. Okay? No unique bean of type sub UI was found. Required one, found two. You will get this message.
मतलब दो जावा फाइल सेम नाम की, यही बोल रहे हो ना?
दो क्लासेस, दो बीन्स, दो बीन्स एक ही क्लास के नहीं हो सकते.
बीन मतलब जावा?
बीन मतलब वो बीन टैग. प्लीज. बीन टैग की बात कर रहा हूं मैं. You cannot have two beans with same class name then. Okay? But if you use ID, ID, then you can have two beans with same type, same class, because you are not loading them by class, you are loading them by ID, so you can have mean. Clear now? It's very logical, you know. If you load them by class, then there has to be only one bean of particular class, but if you load them by ID, you can have many of same class. Okay.
सर ऑब्जेक्ट बन किधर रहा है? सब यूआई का ऑब्जेक्ट इधर बनता है कि एक्सएमएल फाइल में वहाँ पे?
नहीं,
वो कंटेनर बना है।
कंटेनर उधर आप
एक सेकंड बताता हूँ. You made class path XML application context. This will first try to check whether there is an XML file there. If file is found, it will check whether that XML file is a valid one. If it is valid, then there are some classes, there are some components inside class path XML application which will read Mahindra.xml file. They will read individual bean tag, and then inside that they will create an object. ऑब्जेक्ट बना के खुद के पास रखेगा वो, ठीक है. और फिर क्या करेगा? whenever you call get bean, the object, same object will be returned to you.
ऑब्जेक्ट मतलब वेरिएबल.
हाँ, yes, रेफरेंस वेरिएबल दे देगा तुम्हें, ठीक है.
यूआई में स्टोर हो जाएगा.
हाँ,
अच्छा. हाँ.
ओके.